Hey everyone, welcome to our webinar today, where we'll be covering the top 10 pro tips for breaking into commercial electrical jobs. And this is a topic that we hear that comes up a lot internally and with our customers. When we're talking, especially to our newer customers, they mention that they're bidding on, some residential work and maybe some light commercial, and they'd really like to take their bidding or estimating to the next level and take on more complex jobs, more higher dollar jobs, more new commercial jobs. And that's where a lot of our customers that choose to use our electrical bid manager make that jump into using estimating software like ours. It helps them organize their job and kind of make that jump. And so today we're going to go over a little about estimating software, but mostly about best practices. And Brian will have some good stories because he trains new customers and hears a lot about their challenges and where they're trying to go and take their company. So before I turn it over to Brian today, I wanted to mention that if you're on YouTube, there's a chat panel off to the right, and feel free to make comments or ask questions. We'll get to most of your questions throughout the webinar. We might save some or all of them depending on the flow towards the end. So try to hang out if you can, and we'll get to your question. And I think that's about it. Yeah, Brian, would you like
Alrighty.
to take over?
Yeah, I just wanted to reemphasize what Derek was saying about the idea, where the idea for this webinar came from. It's, the kinds of people that I find myself working with and training over the years, and they kind of come from two or three groups. A lot of the estimators who are getting started on our estimating program are people that have been working in the field. They've got no idea where to start with an estimate. So, they could be people that have got a year or 30 years in the field, and now they're coming into the office to do estimating. So they've got a lot of experience in the trade. The other group we get a lot of are people that have just started a business, and they're now trying to go out there. And again, they've been working in the trade for a lot of years or time, and now they're trying to get into the commercial electrical market, and they need to bid, and they can't bid. The old school way, they might have been bidding if they're doing residential work. So first thing, and you really need to get your mindset on, is you really need to give up and stop trying to bid things, or don't try to bid things by the square foot or with a unit price. Square foot pricing or estimating works in very limited situations. If you're a residential contractor and you do a 2,000 square foot home, you can pretty much translate that number per whatever your cost is per foot from one home to the other with minor variations. Unit pricing is a little more sophisticated, but if you've been bidding your jobs and doing probably mostly residential or even small commercial with what I call a unit price of X dollars for a receptacle, X dollars for a switch, $150 for a two by four lay-in, $110, whatever your numbers are, a complete unit price for those types of things you're going to be installing. That just doesn't work if you're really going to get into commercial estimating. There's just too many variables that come into play. So one of the things that makes this whole process doable is the idea of taking off assemblies. And what we mean by an assembly, in case that's not a term, in case that's not terminology that you're familiar with, is when you're in an estimating program and you're taking off what we call an assembly. This would be an assembly that I'm pointing to, or 20 amp duplex receptacle, spec grade with a plastic plate. The components in that assembly, should come up here in just a second, are listed over here. So when I take off one of these assemblies, I get all of the parts that are in it, all the way down to the wire nuts and ground screws and tapping screws and the whole bit. So if I take off 10 of them, I get 10 times everything that's there. So let me flip back to what you need to be able to get to as efficiently as possible is a complete material list of all the materials that are required on the job, and then be able to assign a price of each item to each item, price of material, and then amount of labor. So that's going to look like something like this, whether you do it in an estimating program or whether you do it on a spreadsheet. I worked with people just a couple, 3 weeks ago, a guy who was doing it all by hand. He'd list out all the materials on on a piece of paper, kind of a manual spreadsheet. And then he would, after he listed out all the items for his job, he would look up a price on each item. And he had a labor unit manual that he used for all these items. But, a little job with 50 to 100 items would take him hours to do this report that you're seeing on the screen here. And it all happens within seconds with an estimating program. That's not Vision. That's all the estimating programs. They all generate numbers real quickly. So that's one of the things you want to keep in mind when you're getting started on commercial estimating is you need to be able to generate this report, and the easier and quicker that your program does it, the better. And again, you need to be able to assign. Your material list is never going to be 100% correct, but you want to have as accurate of a material list as you can. And then again, when you put a price on each item and a labor value on each item, that's what you're shooting for. You will need to make adjustments for difficulty. If you're looking at a job that is easy or standard or hard, then once you have all those numbers on your spreadsheet, you can make adjustments to individual items, or you can even put an adjustment factor on the entire job. But if you get that material list again, that's where you start. You got to have that report. You got to have that that data, if you will, before you can move ahead. So assembly takeoff makes that process a lot more efficient. You just put in 100 receptacles, and then your program will tell you how many parts of each you need for all those items in the assembly. So one of the things I see, this always scares me, is when somebody's trying to start into the commercial estimating, whether, again, I might be training somebody who's a brand new user, is I try to encourage them to start small. You don't need to go bid a $2 million job day one. I'd rather see you bid 10, $20,000 jobs or half a dozen $20,000 jobs rather than start with the biggest job you've ever looked at in your life. The other thing you can do is look at local jobs. You don't need to bid a job that's 3 hours away, even though it's possible. Try to stay as local as possible when you're starting out on your first few bids. And again, bid jobs that types of jobs you're familiar with. Don't go bid a wastewater treatment plant if you've been doing commercial offices and schools and things like that. Do something you're familiar with. So do a lot of little jobs and do the kind of jobs you're familiar with when you first start doing commercial estimating. Kind of a whole different topic to be thinking about as you start doing commercial estimates is develop customers who provide you feedback. You need to know when you spend hours putting together bid, and you need to know if that bid is competitive. If not, were you 1% off or 20% off? You need that feedback from your customers. If not giving you feedback, move on. It's useless to be bidding to people just without any feedback. The other side of the relationships you want to be thinking about is your wholesalers. You need to have some relationships with wholesalers who can give you pricing, not only on your regular materials, your conduit and wire and your fittings and all that, but if you need to get a lighting quote or a gear quote, you need to be able to depend on wholesalers who can give you fast and competitive pricing. So that's something you need to work on day one. Again, if you're coming out of the field, your company may already have those relationships, or they may not, or you may want to some extent develop your own. So look at developing relationships with customers and with your wholesalers. There's the whole financial side of things too. You're going to need to be able to have a credit line with your wholesalers. You need to be able to buy materials, right away. And that usually requires a credit line. So you need to look into that unless you've just got unlimited cash. And then the other side of the coin is the payroll. You may have to start paying people the day you walk on the job, and you may not get paid from the general contractor or whoever you're working for at least a few weeks. They don't typically give you money to walk onto the job in in the commercial world, you've got to be able to carry the payroll for at least long enough before you start getting payments on the job. So that's a real important part of this whole process, is having your financing ducks in line. Thinking a little bit further down the road is being able to and taking the time to uh, compare your completed job cost after you finish the job to what you estimated. So you need to be constantly looking at, well, I estimated this job to have 500 hours and it took us 550 or 450, and you want to be looking to see that those numbers are consistent. And if not, you can adjust them, but you want to compare your cost. It doesn't do any good to just throw out a number for a bid if you don't know if your actual performance is going to meet what's in your estimate. I find a lot of people don't spend much, if any, time looking back at what their actual performance was in the job. It takes time. It takes a little bit of effort, but I think it's really important to start that process day one if you're just starting in commercial estimating. If you don't have a job cost system in place, you need to get one at least at the end of the job. You need to know whether that particular job was over or under your estimate. So when you record your material purchases and when you record your payroll, you need to keep track of it by job. Now you can break it down further, which is even better. But at least at the end of the job, you need to know whether you met your estimate. I remember one of the guys I worked with. He said that we would talk about job costing, and his opinion was a lot of contractors don't know how they're doing other than what's in their money in the bank. Well, at that point, it's either too late or you may be looking at misleading information. You need to be looking at each job to see whether you have performed, how well you perform based on your estimate. This is kind of a tricky or a little bit, area you want to be careful with. You don't want to adjust your markups just to be competitive, but in reality, you may need to be. I would rather see you start bidding with a little bit more markup than you think you need, and then you can always come down. It's impossible to go the other direction. If you bid a job or you bid your first 5 jobs and you get all of them, you probably weren't putting enough markup in there. But you may need to at least consider adjusting your markups to be more competitive. That's one of the real important parts of estimating, and it's not scientific totally. There's a lot of variables that come into play. You maybe bid a job and there's only one other electrical contractor bidding or none. The next one there might be a dozen, but you need to know whether you are competitive, and if you're going to make adjustments, be careful with that.
Yeah, we have a YouTube video and I think a blog post about that topic.
Yep. I saw a question about demolition. Demolition is in, I believe, the Plus version of EBM, Derek.
I think so.
I know it's in the Pro. Did you see that question?
No, I didn't.
It was from Jose. Any chance we have the demolition estimating tool available in the base level of EBM? I don't think it's in the standard. I'm pretty sure it's in the Plus and the Pro. And in any case, you can add it for a relatively nominal amount to whatever version you have. You can add that module for demo. I think it's a really handy little module because you don't want to be guessing a demo. You want to be able to quantify it. You don't want to just look at, well, I've got 35 fixtures in that room. I think it's gonna take me 10 hours to take them down. If you can quantify it, just like you saw when you're bidding the job, there's no material cost typically when you're doing demo, but you need to have a labor value for anything you've got to demo.
Yeah, the demolition database is included in Plus and Pro, and
Plus and Pro, okay.
You can you can upgrade from standard to Plus or Pro, or we do offer it a la carte.
Yep.
So if you give us a call or email sales@visioninfosoft.com, we can answer those questions in more detail.
Another option I see a lot of people do that are just getting started with an estimating program is they'll hire an estimating service to do a job, and then they'll also do it themselves and compare the numbers. That way you kind of get you get a good second opinion, if you will. Another thing I do with a lot of people is I'll walk them through one of their first estimates. So we get online and, using a Zoom session, I can see your screen, I can see your prints, and we walk through the whole process just to get you familiar with it. So either that, or actually, I have an estimating service. We can do an estimate for you, and you can compare it to what you're doing on your own. I've had people hire us to do $1.5 million jobs just to get a comparison figure. But as a new estimator, it really gives you a little security to know, and if your numbers are close to what a professional would come up with, and if not, then we can figure out why that is. Talked a little bit about your wholesalers relationship again. You need to check your material pricing. Don't just go in blindly and assume that the prices from one wholesaler are going to be competitive compared to another, or don't assume that the prices in your estimating program are accurate. At least do some spot checking. Check those big commodity items like your EMT and your MC cable and your THHN wire and some of that stuff. You need to check your material pricing to make sure it's accurate. And again, I know this sounds a little bit self-serving, but get trained. Make sure you know how to use your estimating program. I admit and I always tell people that I think that being self-taught is a great thing, because anything you figure out how to do on your own, you remember. But the downside of that is you may not have figured out the easiest way to do it, or you may have even misunderstood how to do it and not know. So the great thing about an estimating program is if you figure out and you master and get comfortable with your estimating program, it'll take care of a lot of the issues and details with the whole process. If you just know what answers to give your program, how to input the right quantities and right information into your bid, it's going to help you learn the process quite a bit.
Hey, Brian, got a question here.
Okay.
You're getting called out. Your comment on waiting up to a few weeks to be paid is misleading. 30 days for pay would be like having a unicorn for a pet. More likely, 45 days is still a dream, and 60 days are more typical.
Yeah, I was trying not to exaggerate. It was just more of a point. But yeah, that'll vary depending on the kind of job you're doing. It'll depend who the customer is. I know sometimes you can get paid pretty quickly, but I just want you to be aware, don't expect to get paid the day you walk on the job. Whether it's a month or 2 weeks later is kind of not my point. It's just not to expect to get paid day one. If you've been working in the field, you don't have, and you're just coming to work inside the office, that's not an issue. But if you're starting your own company, that's something to be prepared for, is that you're going to have lags in the flow of the cash. That'd be timing you need to deal with. That's a good question, though, and I totally agree. I was trying to be optimistic on the amount of time it takes to get paid.
All right. So that covered that was all 10. Excellent. That was efficient, Brian. Well, of course, we'll be here for a little bit longer, but if you had any questions or comments, or you wanted clarification on anything, we'll be here to answer those questions. Just chat them over there on the right if you're on YouTube Live, our YouTube Live. Otherwise, if you don't mind taking a minute to like this video and subscribe to our channel so we
If you
can
just need to,
in front of
chat
people.
with somebody, you can reach out through me. That phone number there, the 800 number, you can leave a message for me, leave a message for anybody in the, a receptionist or any person. They'll get a hold of me, and we can, if you just need a second opinion on how to go about the whole process, I can always help you think that through. I've done it so many times. I work with so many people that have never put an estimate together.
Yeah, or email us at the sales@visioninfosoft.com. It's really probably the more efficient way of doing it nowadays, and we'll forward your email to Brian or whoever needs to help you.
And if you just go to our website, there's ways to contact and reach out to us too.
Yeah, there are. And I've been in the chat on YouTube, and I think our Facebook stream as well. I've been posting videos that follow what Brian was talking about to give a more detailed explanation on like material pricing, or what else did I post up there? Markup strategies. We've been doing a lot of videos that kind of touched on some of the topics Brian brought up today. So look
I don't
through our
think I
YouTube.
understand the last question, Derek. Will you work on your own on-screen takeoff besides PlanSwift in the future?
Well, I think what he means is, are we going to create our own? And I could tell you that yes, we do have plans to do that in the future. As we look to move our software to a 100% web enabled, using your browser to access from anywhere product, that will be part of our solution that we'll have in-house and offer to our customers as part of the software suite. And we'll have more news on that coming soon. We have a team of people working on it, and it can't be done soon enough, but it'll be something that'll be recognizable to current desktop users. So you can keep using our desktop software, and the transition should be pretty easy for you. That's our goal. And to add a few extra bells and whistles, such as the planned takeoff. But for now, PlanSwift is our best integration. We also integrate with OnCenter's on-screen takeoff software. And we have a lot of users that use other planned takeoff software just for counting separately out of EBM, and then they bring the counts manually into their takeoff in EBM. But most of our users use PlanSwift.
Yeah, I'd say it's at least 90%.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to answer the question about the latest version of EBM, Derek?
Let's see here.
He's asking if 23.1 is the latest version.
Oh, yeah. Email sales at VisionInfosoft or support at VisionInfosoft.com, and we'll get you the latest version. We currently are shipping, I guess you could call it 24.0, and we have 24.1 right around the corner. We do our best to email all of our customers when there's a new release, but sometimes the email gets missed, or email is not perfect sometimes. And so be sure to email us or check our website. We have a changelog page on our electrical bid manager page on our website that lists all the bugs and features that we addressed in each new version. So currently our website shows 24.0, but we'll be adding 24.1 soon. Mac version, yeah, so that's been a complication with the Macs since they moved to the ARM processor, their M1, M2, M3 processor. The ARM virtualization of Windows on an ARM processor just isn't there for us, especially. Microsoft is our problem there. Their SQL server is not compatible with ARM yet. We have looked at workarounds, but one of the biggest workaround is to use a virtual service like V2 Cloud, where you actually have a Windows desktop in the cloud that you can access from any device. It's actually kind of convenient, and the subscription fees for that, if you go to v2cloud.com, aren't too bad. I think it's like $35 a month. And then we can help you install your software to that service if you'd like, especially for Mac users. If you're a Windows user, it's more than likely just easier to install it locally. As I mentioned earlier, we are working on that 100% cloud browser software that it doesn't matter what OS you use. So we should, when we at the trade shows this fall at NECA and IEC, we'll be showing an initial demo of our cloud software. So if you're there at the shows, you get to see a little preview, but it won't be launching, and we don't have a launch date quite yet. We're trying to iron out all the wrinkles and make sure it has enough functionality to ensure that our current customers can look at it and go, oh yeah, this works. This works for me. So we'll be coming to our current customers, quite a few of them, and especially if you've offered to be a beta tester, to get you involved with offering feedback. So if you're interested, feel free to email us at sales@visioninfosoft.com or come by our booth at NECA in San Diego this fall in September.
Mention that. It's not too soon to start planning for that. You don't have to be a NECA contractor, by the way, to go to the NECA trade show, and that is by far the largest electrical trade show that is available every year. I think last year they had over 10,000 people attend. And that this year it's actually in San Diego. I think it starts on the 29th of September, and it's a 3-day show. That's a great show. Then also there's another national show in Tampa. I think it's the second or third week of October. The Independent Electrical Contractors trade show is in Tampa coming up. You can look on our website or just Google those, the IEC trade show and the NECA trade show. And those are great places to get just lots of information on the industry. And if you come by, we'll talk to you and show you anything you need to about the products. Right. I saw a question there I wanted to respond to, Derek, about the standard markup percentage, or the standard percentage for calculating profit. Yeah. I get that question almost daily. What is the standard for overhead? What's the standard for profit? And I hesitate to answer that because I think it's all relative, but the numbers I've heard over the years, certainly recently, is that the standard markup for overhead is between 15 and 20%. The standard markup for profit is between 10 and 12. So, and I think those numbers are probably fairly accurate. Again, you've got to look at them within context. You don't want to do a $5,000 job for the same markup that you would do a $500,000 job. It's just not worth your time. You also have to consider, like I talked about earlier, the amount of competition and all that. But those are probably some general starting points: 15 to 20% for overhead, 10 to 12% for profit. I run into people every day that are putting 10% overhead and 10% profit, and I run into other people that are putting 30% overhead. But those national averages are probably at least a good starting point. The other question I saw there was how to calculate your hours for the assembly. And I think that's a really important point I was trying to make at the very beginning, is you have to break it down into the total components that are in the assembly. So each of these items that you see on the material list screen that I'm looking at here came out of an assembly, whether it's 1/2-inch EMT or a little further down, we've got on screen move. There we go. You've got the devices, you've got the plates, you've got the boxes, all the parts that come from the assembly, whether that assembly has 2 items or 10 items, all have a labor value assigned to those items and a price. So that's the whole point of doing assembly estimating, is to get an itemized list of material that you can assign prices and labor units to.
Updating software versions isn't auto. Yes, you're correct. It isn't currently. Well, We're pushing for version 24. Okay, 24.1 is coming out this month. No, in August. And it might just be 24.2 that'll include it. We're adding a whole new system for ensuring our users are notified when there's updates. And they'll be able to have, there'll be a link built into that that will allow you to download the latest update from within Electrical Bid Manager. It is something we've been working on for a little bit now to make sure that our current customers get notified properly when there's a new update. So look out for that. We'll be talking a little bit more about that probably in the next 2 to 3 months as we get close to releasing it, maybe sooner.
The price updating is automatic. The Epic price updates
Right.
download automatically and prompt you to run the update. The software updates, when we've made fixes to the program or we've added new features, that has not been automated yet.
Yeah, those are two different. The pricing within Electrical Bid Manager, EBM, like Brian said, it is automatic if you have our Epic pricing service subscription that helps you keep updated and also can connect you directly with your local supplier if that's your interest. So
Dylan just asked if the software has the labor hours built in. Absolutely, yes. What you're looking at, and I've shown you with the little bits from the program, is the way it comes off the shelf. Every item in the database has a labor value. Actually, you've got 3 labor values: easy, medium, and difficult. So you can tell the program I'm going to use difficult for the entire job, or I'm going to use difficult for specific items. But yeah, the labor units are built into the program.
yeah, double click on one. Shouldn't it show just by choosing one of the items?
Let's see, get to the right screen here. So this is just a single pole switch, and here's the labor values over to the right. The column 2 is what we call standard or normal. Then that's 0.15 hours. If it's an easy job, you could tell it to use the lowest, or if it's a difficult job, you can use the higher number.
And you can change those, of course.
You can change them just for the job. You can change them permanently in the system too.
Yeah. Yeah, let's see. Did we get this one? How do you calculate how many labor hours the assemblies will take to install? It was the same person asking. Maybe he clarified.
I did answer that. Yeah.
Okay,
yep.
Good. I was too busy looking at something else. All right. Yeah. I think we covered it all. And I don't know, Eric Stout, if you caught your question that Brian already answered about the standard percentage of calculating profit. Somewhat related, earlier in the chat, I posted a video about markup and profit that we did that touches on that with a little bit more detail. I don't remember if we actually mentioned a sort of standard or benchmark to start from. I think maybe we did in that video, but it goes into a lot more detail. Yeah. Our library of videos has quite the coverage now. We need to keep coming up with more though. All right, well, thank you everyone for joining us today. I can't think of anything else to touch on. You're welcome, Dylan. Thank you. All right, Brian, got anything else?
Nope, I don't.
No? All right. Well, We'll see you guys next month.